Thank you all for joining us for this webinar. We've recently released Chaos Vantage, previously Project Lavina, an easy way for artists and designers to bring their 3D production scenes into real time. With it, you can freely explore and interact with your 3D scenes, all ray-traced in real time. I'm Simeon Balabanov, Product Manager for Chaos Vantage at Chaos. I'm joined by Nigel Hunt, co-founder and CEO of SINi Software, and today we'll be talking about Vantage. In this first part of the webinar, I'll briefly walk you through what Chaos Vantage can do, how easy it is to use, and how it can help you visualize your projects in real time. In the second part of our webinar, Nigel will talk about how Urban have been using Chaos Vantage in their workflow. Q&A will be open throughout the sessions, so post your questions in the chat box. So let's get started. To demonstrate how easy it is to ray trace your scenes in real time with Chaos Vantage, I'm going to be using a scene from Evermotion, specifically Argvis Interiors 44 Scene 2. You can see I'm using the quad viewport layout, and this is because I'm going to be placing Vantage on top of the upper left viewport. By using Live Link, I'll be able to see the changes I do in 3ds Max rendered directly in Vantage in real time. So let's start Live Link. I'm going to minimize the VFB. And once Vantage starts, we'll be able to see that the connection was established by the Live Link text on the bottom. Now I can move around, but as soon as I start manipulating 3ds Max, you will see Vantage goes behind 3ds Max, and this is undesired. To fix this, I'm going to go to Edit Preferences, and in the UI tab, I'm going to enable Windows Always on Top. This way, Vantage will always stay on top, even if I try to manipulate and change things within 3ds Max. Now what's left is to resize the window, but as you can see, the sidebars are taking quite much space, and I can hide those by double-clicking on the side, but there is a nifty trick that I'm going to show you, which is the command toggle interface with the shortcut key of Control and the accent key. Okay. Pressing the shortcut key hides the interface and leaves only the viewport visible so that we can have more screen space. Let's resize the window a little bit better so that we can fit in the viewport of 3ds Max. All right. Okay, so now I can modify the scene freely, as you can see, especially from the camera, and everything I modify in 3ds Max will be reflected in Vantage. I have my viewport locked to the active camera, but you can switch that to the perspective or any other viewport by unchecking the lock here in the render setup dialog, and you can see that now Vantage renders the perspective viewport. However, I prefer locking that to the active camera so that I always see the composition that I'm currently working on. We've recently released Chaos Cosmos, a 3D content system that reduces the process of staging interiors and environments to a few clicks. All assets are render ready and really easy to use to give users a consistent experience across the Chaos ecosystem. Chaos Cosmos is included in all of our AEC products, with more to come later this year. Let's use it now and add some assets in the scene. Let's open up the Cosmos browser. And I'm looking for 3D models in the people category. Let's pick a model, like for example Steve Post 002, and drag and drop it in the viewport. There we go, the model is created and updated in Vantage as well. I'm going to add another model. Let's, I don't know, for example, Nathan Post 026, and drag and drop it as well. It is also updated directly in Vantage and in 3ds Studio Max. Now let's reposition that in the perspective viewport. Okay, let's select the move tool. Somewhere more in the background. Yep, this is fine. And let's reposition the other model. Whoops. Reposition the other model near the reception desk. Oops, I've misplaced the floor. So let's undo, go back, and reposition the other model right next to the reception desk, somewhere here. Yep, that will do. Let's rotate it properly. Makes more sense like that. And bring it closer. All right. Okay. We can continue working in 3ds Max, but this way we won't be able to use Vantage to render animations. As I mentioned before, LiveLink is best used to reflect changes done in 3ds Max. And this is why editing objects in Vantage during a LiveLink session is very limited. So let's transfer our scene to Vantage and continue there. First, I'm going to stop the LiveLink session by clicking on the button again. And once the LiveLink text has disappeared, we know that the LiveLink is closed. Then I can export the scene by pressing the second button on the Vantage toolbar. And that will automatically export a VR scene on a temporary location and load that in Vantage. As you can see, all the object list and material list and the light lister have been populated with the appropriate data, and we can continue working in Vantage. The first thing I'm going to do is change the resolution to something larger so that we get more crispy image, and I'm going to disable the filling of the frame buffer. This way the image will be sharper and we can continue working within Vantage. Since we implemented the Chaos Cosmos browser in Vantage directly, we can open this up and start placing objects directly in the Vantage session. Let's open the Cosmos browser, and I'm going to click on it and make Vantage pause rendering so that the Cosmos browser updates faster. Let's resize that so that we can see more assets. And I'm going to browse. Let's select some category, like let's go with accessories. And I'm going to go to decoration. And I like this tray, so let's drag and drop it. But first I'm going to maximize the viewport using the hotkey we already mentioned. Get closer to this table and and let's drag and drop the tray. The red arrow indicator indicates that the asset is going to be placed along the normal. And let's reposition that. Okay. So I think we can put another person over there, and we need a sitting person for that. So let's select this girl, Lily Post, and reposition that. Okay. We can see the height doesn't match. She floats a little bit in the air, so I'm just going to rescale her. Like so. All right. Not that much. I'm going to rotate her to the left. Adjust it just a bit. Right, okay, this is good. So let's change the lighting a little bit. We've introduced a new mode for the sun and sky system, and that's geolocated type of day. So let's remove the Cosmos browser. Go to the home camera and start adjusting the sunlight. If I click on the sunlight link here, it will select it in the light lister where I can edit its parameters. Let's select the sun position to geolocation. Now I can specify a geographic latitude and longitude as well as time of day and date. Let's bring the hours to early morning, and sliding the minutes slider is going to automatically adjust the hour spinner as well. So let's find a good morning or a sunrise position, something like that. Yeah, I like this sunspot because it illuminates the model here much better, gives it a warmer feeling. And if I want to get rid of that, I could just simply adjust the north offset position. And this way the bright spot is almost gone. An alternative way to lower the brightness of the image would be to use the exposure. I can preview how much exposure I need to go back with the exposure slider. So that's roughly 0.3. And to do that, I'm going to go to the physical camera, but instead of using the physical exposure, I'm going to use exposure value. Let's lower the exposure value to something like 7, maybe even a bit less. Okay, this is good. And then to dial back on the highlights, I'm going to go to the Post tab and dial back on the highlight burn. If I see I'm starting to lose saturation, I'm going to bring it up a notch. And while I'm here, I will be using some LUT. Let's preview those. Okay. I like the warm one. And yeah, the cool one is also really good. But I think I'll go with the warm one. And since this is a bit too drastic, I'm going to lower the LUT amount. Yeah, halfway or so. And let's enable the depth of field, adjust the F number. Oops, that's too much. Pick a focus plane, and I'm going to use more physically accurate to 1.2. And let's adjust the camera point of view, bring it a bit down. I want to focus more on the ceiling, but now the 2-point perspective is wrong, so let's fix that. Okay, just a little bit like that. All right, so I'm going to save a camera here and move my camera to the left. I'm going to do a panning motion as an animation. Let's update my first camera so that it starts from this position. And then I'm just going to slide it to the right or pan to the right. So up here. Let's save another camera. And now we can make an animation between the two states. Okay, something like that. Let's open up the animation editor. And I'm going to drag the first camera. Now, since this is a clip that has a duration, as you can see, it's about 1 second long. And I'm going to make it transient, which makes it a very, very short instantaneous keyframe. Drag the second camera as well. Make it transient as well. And as you can see now, these two keyframes are represented by thin orange lines. I will select the second one, right click, and say add transition before. This way I have an interpolation, which is linear in this case, between the two keyframes. And currently this is of duration 1 second, so let's increase the duration to something like 10 or maybe 7, 8 seconds. And now if I play, the animation is much slower and much nicer. You can see that the range of the animation is smaller than the clip size, and by this arrow here. So I'm going to Alt and scroll out to zoom out and see the whole duration of the transition. And I can also right click and change the tangent or the easing of the curve. And with quads, you can set the ease out of the first keyframe or the ease in for the second keyframe to be smooth. So now the animation starts slow, speeds up in the middle, and then slows down again in the end. But this feels a little bit off to me, so I'm going to switch to only out quad so that the end of the transition is slowed down and the beginning is linear. And this makes the whole transition appear more smooth and more complete with a better finish. And here is the same shot rendered with a bit more time per frame to increase the quality. This was only one way of using Vantage to experience your scenes in real time. Let's see Nigel's workflow with a slightly different approach to exploring their projects with ray tracing. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I am Nigel Hunt. I am the director of Urban. Today's talk is going to focus on the production work that Urban does and not the other companies that I'm involved in. But just a quick introduction about myself. So yes, I own Urban, which is if you like, a phoenix of my old studio, which is called Glowfrog Studios. I'm also the CEO and co-founder of SINi Software, as well as the editor of 3 Disciple magazine. Plus, in the community, I'm involved with, or an organizer of 3DS London, The Rookies, and luckily or thankfully, the 24 Hours of Chaos with Chaos Group. So, yes, today's agenda, let's have a look at that. So, I'm going to quickly introduce a little bit about myself, about the background, and then we're going to get into our first Vantage case study, which is Wembley Park, which is a master plan or regeneration project in United Kingdom and London. And then we're going to look at the Stack a World project, which is a downloadable project with 3 Disciple magazine that you can download. At the end of this, I'm going to give you some download links to download from that project the Vantage scenes in both day and night. And then, yeah, we're going to wrap up, bit of a conclusion. But yeah, let's get started. So, a little bit about me. So, who am I? Where do I come from? I came to the United Kingdom from New Zealand in 1992. So I'd studied architecture in the late 1980s. I went traveling with my girlfriend. We settled in the United Kingdom. And at the time, this is really at the dawn of the computer graphics age. So I'd studied architecture. I was reading the architectural magazines. There were a lot of glossy images that were coming out in the early 90s. And I really was persuaded to actually start work. So Hayes Davidson started in 1989. I started a studio there in Green in 1996. And as you can see, more and more studios have come online as the years have gone past. So these are just UK companies that have started. So I've really, if you like, seen 30 years of architectural visualization and how that's changed from the very, very early days. But we're not going to dwell on that today. I think what I want to do now, let's just jump straight into sharing my screen. Let's just quickly do that from here. Okay. So over the years, having a studio that started in 1996, I was very, very keen to actually diversify away from pure architecture. So I built a studio called Glowfrog that specialized in broadcast visual effects and marketing films. So over the years, these are just some of the TV shows, feature films, big marketing films in the Middle East and around the world. So quick slide showing you that. The other thing we built a reputation for was building cities and big master plans. So you can see from this slide that we would build the entire New York, Manhattan Island, rewind that back 300 years, or in the case of this one down here, that is Dubai Creek Harbour in the UAE, which is an enormous master plan project. Today, though, we're going to talk about Wembley Park. But yeah, lots and lots of master plan work, including going right back in history. We've got Tudor London, we've got ancient Rome. Here's one of the shots from a Kuwait 2035 vision. So this is what there weren't any architects involved. We had to actually come up with the concept design, working with the Kuwait royal family on this. Big master plan project in Shenzhen in China that has 35,000 animated cars. Dubai Creek Harbour. I don't have time to actually go over this film, so I'll skip over that. And ancient Rome, entire ancient Rome built, and Tudor London. So it's great fun working on these projects. Does involve quite a lot of work, involves quite a lot of software, script writing, hence where SINi Software came from, actually making these sorts of projects. But that's for a different story altogether. Back to me, that really gives you a background to some of the work that we've covered. That everything you saw there was rendered in V-Ray and created in 3D Studio Max. Hence, where we're going now with Vantage and the use of Vantage in production. So let's jump straight into that and start to look then at Wembley Park. Okay, so Wembley Park is, as I mentioned before, it's in London. It is the home of British football, but we have been involved in the regeneration project that sits around the stadium itself. So you can see, if I just bring up the pointer here, on the left here, this is an aerial photo from 2020. On the right is the master plan. It's the largest single site of build-to-rent homes in the UK. And our client has been working on it for best part of 20 years. So if I jump to the next slide, the stats involved, it's quite a big project. So it's 85 acres, which is 85 football pitches. We've been involved on around 90 buildings so far. It's a 25-year project, and there's 8,500 homes. So looking at stats that we've been involved in, we've been involved with the job for around 12 years. We've produced around 750 models and counting. There's live, there's around 200 XREFs, there's around 4,000 V-Ray proxies, and we use 3D Studio Max and V-Ray. So these are just some of the hundreds and hundreds of images we've produced over the years, down to marketing images, interiors, and it's very much an ongoing project. Here's a aerial turntable showing you a chalk render, the V-Ray render in daytime, including all the context model. So we update this or have done over the years. It's been updated quite regularly in both daytime and nighttime. And the client has used this really for informing their stakeholders of as and when different buildings come online. It's been very much an ongoing process. But let's just jump forward. So in 2019, we were asked by the client to look at an interactive application, some way for because they're now moving into the sales process, some way for their sales agents to actually interact with the model. Now we looked at alternative game engines, but because as you saw before, the whole asset has been built in 3D Studio Max and V-Ray, the cost was so prohibitive to actually move this enormous 30 gig asset from what we currently have into the game engine that we decided to actually work in a different way. And this has been created in Unity, but it's actually camera projecting the V-Ray renders straight into it. But I talked about this at Autodesk University last year, so I'm not going to sort of talk about this much. But you can just see that it's we'd like to stay within V-Ray. It's a very, very fast way of working. We're creating 360 VRs. That the model is so detailed now that as it's being built, the sales agents are using the VR views to actually sell property. So one of the issues that we've all had to address, or a lot of us have had to address over the last year, is the issue of working from home because of COVID. Most of us, so I'm coming up to almost a year of not actually going into the office. I think I've been in maybe 4, maybe 5 times, but I've had to work from home, as have my team. So, and I should add, as have our clients and all of their team as well. So we've all had to come up with a way of working and collaborating. Now, that becomes incredibly hard when you're trying to share visual ideas or visual media. In the past, that you would render out maybe a preview, or you would create an image and you send it to your client, and then within a period of time they'll send back a marked up PDF or JPEGs. I've scribbled all over it. It's a very slow process. It's not really collaborative, and I find it incredibly frustrating on a Zoom call when a client's just talking through notes or ideas that you're not getting the whole picture. So we've looked at we've been looking at what Chaos have been doing with Vantage, or previously Project Lavina. So we've been experimenting with that for the last 2 years. COVID has actually, if you like, projected that forward, that a year ago when we started having to all work from home, we all had to start using collaborative software such as Slack. Now, my team used Slack. We shared screens all the time. We're talking continuously as if we're in the same studio together. The thing that was missing is that we couldn't actually walk around or really hands-on explore a scene properly, as if you would if you were standing beside, or if you're in the same room and you're saying, can we just spin the camera around there? Let's just move that tree around. So along comes Vantage, and it's been a game changer for us. So not just for our internal team. So on a very much a daily basis, we're sharing the 3D Studio Max scene in Vantage. So we'll share that screen, we'll jump straight into Vantage, and we'll walk around the model. And we're starting to discover things, because Wembley Park is V-Ray proxy heavy. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of proxies, and the whole scene is optimized. So the display format is, and we've got everything in box mode, so you can't see if you're looking at the landscape, you can't see anything. So the only way to do that, now that we have Vantage and that Forest Pack supports Vantage, is we can actually walk around the scene that you'll see in a second in real time. We can see everything as it should look, and we can make changes. So I can actually be in the Vantage scene with the client, and that scene is file linked from 3D Studio Max. So we could stand in the middle of a park and say to one of my team, who are also on the Slack call, look, can you just move the tree around? Can we add some more people there? And we can see that in real time. So let's demonstrate that to you now. I'm going to invite my colleague Fernando to join me so we can actually show you that process. Hopefully it's going to work. Yeah, thank you. Hi, Fernando.
Hi, Nigel.
Right, share your screen.
Yes. Yes. Can you see it?
Yeah, let me draw on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a few views to just go through. Shall we cycle through those first and then come back to this one?
Yes. Got that one. I got that.
So the meadows, wild meadows view.
With the one.
And then an overview of the pond area. And then a close-up of the pond. Okay, great. Let's go back to the cafe where we're standing over here.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is just add some people. So somewhere filling up this foreground area would be quite nice. With V-Ray 5, we are now using Chaos Cosmos, which is a collection of 3D models. So there's a whole bunch of 3D people that we are also now using, but we already had a lot of them. So there we go. Drop those in. That's fine. Also, I'd quite like to, the umbrella that's here, I'd quite like to see what that looks like if we copied another one, say, between these two tables.
Okay.
Okay, that's great. Now let's move to that second view, the view through the meadows, the walkway that passed through over there. I mentioned before the fact that we are using a lot of V-Ray proxies. This is all forest pack, all the landscape. So it's really helpful for in Vantage for us to be able to look at the landscape. I noticed before that we might need to paint in some more wildflowers through there.
Okay, let me just turn off the link to paint faster.
So you've disconnected the live link so you could just paint in 3D Studio.
Yeah,
and
fast.
Yeah, because it's well, there'd be a lag at the moment. Okay, so you paint that up. Okay, that looks good. Yep, we've now got nice flowers. Can we go to that other view that was over there?
Okay, 1 second.
Okay, the thing I noticed about this, that what time of day is this? Is that because there's quite a lot of sunlight in the foreground.
1 second.
Could we move that sun so we get some shadow somewhere across the foreground there?
Yeah, right now it's 11 o'clock. I'll change to 12. Maybe 12.
No, that's too much. Wait, what about somewhere in between?
Or 40.
Yeah, leave it like that. That's fine. Okay, last thing, if we maybe have a little bit of a walk around this boardwalk, just so I can sort of demonstrate the fact that we can walk around this model and inspect that. So back over to here. Did you add the fish?
Yeah.
I can see one's jumping up for catching some bugs. Yeah. So we've got fish there.
So you can walk.
So again, as I sort of mentioned before, I'm able to actually walk around with a client. So you could imagine Fernando, myself, and a client could be on the same call, and we can actually now quickly go around and inspect the model. That is, I mean, the forest pack looks lovely there, but that's enough, Fernando, to show me today. Thanks for your help.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Cheers, bye. Okay, so that shows you the, if you like, the collaborative approach of how my team and myself and me and my clients will collaborate on a daily basis using Vantage. The next thing I want to just quickly talk about is rendering. Now, typically we will use V-Ray, or we do use Corona, but for marketing or final renders, we are discovering that Vantage is proving incredibly useful for really, really quick turnaround renders as well. So if I show you what I mean there, if I hop to the next screen, what we have here is some, if you like, planning renders. So on the right are rendered in V-Ray. That's using a cloud render farm that cost quite a lot of money. It took 6 minutes a frame to render. Now these are just short shots from within a 2-minute film. But you can see this is only used once. It's used for a planning meeting. It's used for a client approval. They look at this, they go, let's make changes to it, and it's redundant. They throw it away, they come back to you and they want to make more changes. So that costs the client a lot of money. It costs you a lot of time and effort to actually upload to the cloud render farm and download. So the alternative we're now using is Vantage. So you can see on the left, the quality is almost the same. It's using, you can see the forest packs in there, the lighting's similar, but it's taking 30 seconds a frame. So that on the left is rendered on one workstation as opposed to sending to a cloud render farm. It's a bit of a, there's a little bit of a workaround to actually get your cameras in, but I will show you that on the next slide. And if I just cross to that, let's just switch this off so you can actually see. So here's the workaround. It's a way of actually slowing down the recording so that you can actually record a nice smooth camera movement, and it's in the bottom right corner. I've got a QR code to a Vimeo link that's actually going to walk you through that process, so you can look at that properly in your own time, but follow those steps and you'll get the similar results to what I showed you before. There we go. Right, so what we're going to cover next is we're going to jump onto the Stacker World project. I'm going to show you a few other little tricks and fun stuff. Okay, so the final project or case study we're going to look at is Stacker World, which is a downloadable 3ds Max tutorial project that comes with the latest issue of 3 Disciple magazine. I'll put the QR codes to the project and to download the Chaos Vantage VR scenes, both day and night, at the end of this talk. But let's quickly just jump into it. So I'll share with you the screen. So these are renders from Vantage. The reason I use this over V-Ray, I think I've covered that earlier, but these were rendered at 4K. It took 30 seconds an image to render. Running up to the publication of the magazine, I decided that I wanted to create a 2.5-minute trailer for this project. I turned to Vantage because I knew that I could render these sorts of renders straight out of it. It took 30 seconds a frame. So I set myself a challenge to actually make 2.5-minute film in 24 hours. So just want to sort of go over a little bit of that in the last few minutes of this. I'll show you how I created these are day shots. So we moved that pretty quick into night, and I'm going to show you that in a second of how we actually just swapped out the textures from day scene to night scene. And surprisingly, there was no overhead for rendering all the global illumination and the glowing lights in Vantage, whereas in V-Ray, so these took 30 seconds a frame to render at 4K. In V-Ray, when I tried looking at just as a comparison, that was taking 10 to 15 minutes a frame. So I stuck with Vantage the whole way. So that's what we're going to talk about now. Just showing you some of the renders that were rendered at 4K. So the project is really promoting a 3D Studio Max script that is exclusive to the magazine. You get everything's bundled with the downloadable. I don't want this to be a full-on sales pitch, but you can actually download this pretty cheap from the magazine. And then the dusk view. So this is all using Forest Pack. Everything there is straight out of Vantage. Right, now we're back in 3D Studio Max. The first thing that we're going to do, we're just going to connect back to the Vantage link. So the live link to Vantage, and you can see there, that's how our day scene looks in Vantage. It's same camera, so you know I can now move around in Vantage and have a look at the scene. It's fully textured, it's textured for daytime. Now if I just jump to the walkthrough mode and walk around that model, this is still live linked to 3D Studio Max, so I can make any changes in this, but I have to come out of the walkthrough mode. So this is just showing you the live rendering. Change to a different camera. Let's just drop down to a different part of the model and have a look around. So you can see, yes, rendering in real time. It's a really good way of referencing your 3D Studio Max model. You can see there's no lag in rendering. It's quite a decent sized model, quite big, but this is also available in the link that I'm going to give you at the end of this. So you can actually bring this model, the daytime and the nighttime, into Vantage and have a walk around yourself. Okay, back in 3D Studio Max, let's convert this scene over to a nighttime. So first thing we're going to do, unfreeze everything, and then we need to actually jump in and change the HDRI lighting. So for this, I'm just going to unfreeze the SINi Illumi layer. You can see we've used Illumi, which is an HDRI wizard. If I open that up from the SINi toolbar and then select the single HDRI and load that in, I'm going to select the camera that we've used and then import the HDRI. So that's now brought the HDRI in. If I now then jump over to Vantage, you can see we've changed the HDRI lighting straight away, but the model is still using daytime textures on all the buildings. So now what we want to do is go back into Max and let's swap out all the day textures for night textures. So for that, I'm using Unite, SINi Unite. I've gone to the repath tool and I'm going to repath to textures night. I'm going to select that, and that is now going to go through and repath every single texture in the scene to use the night shaders. So you can see what we're now doing. In 3D Studio Max, what I'm going through, I'm going to there's a slight difference between V-Ray shaders and how they look in Vantage. So we just need to tweak those a bit, especially from the self-illumination. So what I'm doing here, just I'm selecting some of the buildings. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going through and I am upping the multiplier on the self-illumination just to give us a nice glow to things like windows, to light. So that's how it's starting to look. I'm not going to go through and do every single building, but at the end of this, I'll show you how that looks once that's all been applied. But it's a really, really quick method of setting up, say, like a city or street scene with your night lighting. But I should point out that those shaders were designed for this from the very beginning. So let's just jump into the final scene. This is how it looks. You can see I'm now in a walkthrough mode, so I'm actually walking through the actual scene itself, and there's no lag in rendering. We've got all the GI on, the lights, self-illuminated lights are glowing, and it's looking quite Tron-like, if if you will. What's good about this is I can actually now start to use Vantage again as a reference and start to look at how different areas need to be lit with V-Ray lighting in 3D Studio Max. So I can hop into, say, like the central area, look around, see where I need to put specific lights, or in the case of the bridge, it's quite dark. So maybe what we want to do is add a few more spotlights in there, but that's for a different exercise altogether. So let's just walk across this bridge. By all means, when you get to play with this model, have a walk around, and yeah, enjoy. That is it for changing from daytime to nighttime. You can see it's a very, very easy process. It's a very fast way of rendering. Okay, so here are the QR codes on the right, and download the VR scenes. On the left, you can find out more about the Stacker World project. Okay, so that is all from me. I think the last thing is to wrap up what we've talked about. So fast previewing, it's use Vantage if you're just wanting to render out camera previews. I think a really good sample to quickly show you here is the comparison between 3ds Max preview and using Vantage. So on the left, it took 15 minutes to render what essentially could be a finished shot, and the other is a wireframe in 3ds Max. It's really great if you've got a second monitor to have Vantage open to explore your scene. So if you're working like we do with a lot of proxies, you can actually look at things in real time. You can make updates, or if you wish, you can jump in and walk around your models to explore them further. It's fantastic for collaboration, especially in this work from home world where you're wanting to share a model with either your client or say one of your team members, so you can actually collaborate really easy together on that. If you're wanting to use it for rendering, we are now using it for client renders. It's proven to be incredibly useful and saves a lot of money both for us and our clients. And yeah, try it. It is fantastic and fun to use. And I think finally, if you're wanting to get hold of me, here's some social media contacts, QR codes again. So use your mobile or cell device, scan those, and you can find me on Instagram. You've got my website. You've got the Facebook and LinkedIn. So thank you very much. I'm going to finish now, and I hope you enjoyed that.
Thanks. Okay. Thanks,
Okay.
Nigel.
No, you're welcome.
Can you hear us? Yeah.
Yeah.
First, just to check, can you hear me again back?
I hope everyone enjoyed that.
Yeah. So thanks, Nigel. Thanks for everyone joining us. I hope you enjoyed our Chaos Vantage presentations. As a reminder, Chaos Vantage is free until June the 2nd, and you can easily download it from chaosgroup.com/vantage. It's also part of the V-Ray collection. We see that there are quite a few questions, but there's still time to ask yours. We'll now try to go over as many as possible, but we'll be checking on all the questions till the end of the show. So please stay tuned. Okay. All right. So everything should be okay. All right. Yeah. So, right. Let's go over the questions. So there is a question: what is the reason Nigel had to reduce the frame rate in 3ds Max when recording the camera movement? Obviously, that will be for Nigel. Would you like to take this, Nigel? I think we lost him. So okay, so we'll get back to this question until we get Nigel back. Okay, so another question is that we've got. Okay, so he has Nigel has some issues with the mic, but yeah, I'll answer another question until then. So Bartolomei, sorry about probably mispronouncing the name, but he says, I have a question. Will the topic of flickering be discussed? I believe Anna answered somewhat, or actually asked a bit more. So I have a problem with flickering on my interior scene. Depending on what type of flickering you mean, we sometimes we see flickering generated from fireflies. Little tiny specks that appear here and there. That could be one of the reasons. This could be solved by clumping the result from the secondary rays as one solution. An alternative solution would be to double check what type of materials are you using. Sometimes BRDFs like Phong with very, very large glossiness values can produce those. But we will definitely work on some solutions like Firefly filtering to help reduce those. However, if the flickering is caused by something else, so for example, another one that I can think of would be flickering from the denoiser, especially on the sides of the image. These could be alleviated by increasing the resolution over a scan. That's an advanced option in the advanced scene settings, or sorry, in the preferences, where you can just take a few pixels around more, render a few pixels more outside of the frame of the image, and that will help reduce those. And if finally you are talking about interiors flickering, such as slightly brighter or slightly darker spots, that's the last one that I can think of. That could be coming from the denoiser, because the first few passes are really noisy, the first one or two passes of the image. And depending on your setup, this can take up to a second or two to clean up, or maybe a bit more. So in this case, the reasons for these are that you have a more complex lighting scenario. So the way to fix that could be to either reduce the higher intensities from the environment, or just wait a little bit for the image to clean up. But again, these are all speculations. So if you can write us with a more particular example on the forums, we'll gladly take a look at that and give more appropriate suggestions. So the next question.
Do you want me to jump in and answer a question?
Oh, you're here. Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no. That luckily, or funny enough, my batteries on my microphone died just after I finished that presentation, so that's fixed now. What your question was? What was the reason that we slowed down the frame rate in Vantage or in 3D Studio Max when we record the Max camera?
Yep.
It was one of the tips from the Chaos forums to get rid of the stuttering. Now, in Max on a bigger scene, if you push play on the playhead, it sometimes struggles to actually refresh all the geometry, so it's going to start dropping frames. So what we like to do is actually just empty or go into a new scene and record that at the slowest speed possible, and then render it out at, say, like we're recording it at quarter speed, and then we've taken it into Premiere, and it's a nice, smooth camera move. It's a tried and tested technique. It was a suggestion on one of the forums. We've tried it and it works. So for us, it's not a Vantage thing. It's coming from 3ds Max, and it's when we record a smaller scene, such as the one Simeon you showed, it works fine. But because we're working on big master plans, we don't want to take any risk.
No, it totally makes sense. Yep, nice one. And thanks for again mentioning the forum. There are some really nice tricks there.
there are, and there are a lot of people contributing, and it's a good place to start asking your questions.
Absolutely.
I saw there's another one for me. Shall I do the next one? Because I'm looking through all these questions and I see there's lots for you and only 2 for me. So obviously everyone was gobsmacked by what I presented or doesn't have a single question. But the next one from Jonathan Birch, why aren't we using RTX 3000 cards? We would if we had hold of them. I'm finding on projects of this size that a single RTX 2080 is perfect for me and my team. We are considering bridging, getting a second one, but that's just because we're greedy and we like doing real-time work.
I can just add a little bit on here. The main component actually answered the part of are the results similar. We don't have a clear comparison between exactly those 2 cards, but as a rule of thumb, you can just check the specs of the graphics cards, and especially the RT cores count, and that is pretty good indicator of what a card could be, how a card can be compared to another one. In this particular case, I believe they have almost similar, if not the similar RT count. And in that type of cases, usually you will get a slightly better performance from the 30 series because of the increased tensor core count, which also allows better better AI calculations. This is general.
One of the things that we find is if you just change the optimization in Vantage itself. So when I was showing you, I was collaborating with Fernando. He likes to drop the screen size to quite small because we're not really interested in the quality of the work. We're trying to actually look dev a project, and then we can bang it up to HD later. Or if I'm on a call with a client, then it's just be sensible with your graphics card. You can use a lower end one, but don't expect to be working at 4K.
Yeah, totally. And resolution is by far the biggest impact on the frame rate. So yeah. And then we have a question from Craig Williams. Thanks, Nigel. Sorry, it's how rude of me. Thanks for the answers. It's I think we have another one for you actually, but first. Craig asked, would you recommend using Chaos Vantage rather than V-Ray Vision for live viewing? And he had some issues with Cosmos assets. We will forward this. We'll forward this to the appropriate teams. But generally, this should be more of a bug rather than a recommendation. And we recommend Chaos Cosmos with every Chaos product. It is designed to work nicely across all platforms. But again, if you experience some issues, we will definitely check those and log those in the bug tracking. And the next question, I believe, is more towards Nigel. It's how is Grass created for Vantage? I have been told by Chaos that V-Ray Fur does not work. That is absolutely true. Fur is not supported yet. But actually, instances are the way to work around. And,
let me promote another plugins company for we that Forest Pack from i2 Software works perfectly, and you saw everything that yes, I know we or SINi has scattering tools and other tools, but i2's tools work seamlessly with Vantage, and that's why we use it. I mean, you saw everything that I had in my presentation was all Forest Pack. I wouldn't look at anything else, to be honest. It's not
Awesome.
not for, but it's also all our projects are set up that way. So we wouldn't want to use anything else.
Well, at least shows interoperability between different plugins and
yeah.
So yeah, and in short, if you're using some kind of instance of scattering and instancing, that could be a workaround for creating fur or grass. And yeah, okay. So then we have a question from Hamid Reza, and I can't pronounce the second one properly, so I'm not going to butcher it. Apologies again, guys, for not pronouncing properly. So due to restrictions on the sale of RTX series graphic cards, do you intend to launch Vantage for GTX model graphics card? Actually, Chaos Vantage, although it requires hardware ray tracing, the GTX 1080 Ti can run Vantage, but that comes at a significantly lower frame rate in the rates of times 8-10 times lower frame rate, and which delivers quite diminished performance, and we don't recommend that. And the fact is that Vantage takes advantage, no pun intended, from the RT cores again, and the 1080 Ti does not have such cores, so everything has to be kind of emulated, and it becomes really, really slow. So yeah, this is the matter of fact that we need some type of hardware ray tracing and the graphics card to support that. So in short, anything that supports DXR, and at this time RTX, NVIDIA RTX only. Another question from Pavel, RTX 2060 due to only 6 GB of RAM. There is problem to open such scenes. Yeah, we know that video RAM is a bottleneck, and we are working on ways to try and reduce memory consumption. As general rule of thumb, try not using live link in such scenes, but export the viewer scene and then close 3ds Max, because it occupies a bit of VRAM. Also, maybe some applications that could potentially eat up on the video RAM. You can use tools such as MSI Afterburner or something similar to track the memory consumption on the graphics card, not only the CPU, and check how you can reduce the load for those and keep the maximum available for Vantage. And one other thing would be, as I said, resolution is very very important for video memory consumption. So you can lower down the resolution first and then open up the VR scene. For example, go from 7020p to something like 540p or even low, and then open up the VR scene. This will guarantee that you have as much memory pool as possible. And then we have Keyframes Animation Academy for Vantage GeForce 2080. Is it better or versus Quadro RTX 5000 or 4000? I would say that. I would say that in that particular case, the difference would be. Okay, so yeah, it's a little bit difficult, but again, as a rule of thumb, look up for the RT cores amount. The higher it is, the better the performance, and the other difference would be memory availables on the GPU. The Quadros, as a rule of thumb, have larger memory pools, and they can load larger scenes. Yeah, and in this case, 5000 would be more performant than 4000, obviously, but I cannot compare it to the 2080 because I can't remember, the RT cores amount. Gregory asked, does it handle deformation, geometry, particles, liquids, VDBs? is it only good for static scenes? Yes, at this moment, only the only animation that Vantage supports is transformation. So no deformable geometries and no particle support. Fluids could be supported if you're using the geometry mode from, let's say, Phoenix FD, or the geometry mode as a whole. VDBs, in the sense of volumetric, are not supported, and and they will take some time for us to start supporting those. So okay. Diogo ask when Chaos Vantage will work with Cinema 4D, and also Andre, will this be released for the Cinema 4D? And also elaborate on Maya and Corona. All right, a lot of questions here. So we actually a few updates ago added support for some blocking aspects of very first Cinema 4D, or some things that were not supported in very first Cinema 4D. So if you update to your latest versions of very first Cinema 4D and the latest version of Vantage, you should not have any issues. The only missing feature, I would say, would be an occasional UVW or UVW issue, and the live link is not yet exposed in Cinema 4D, but both of those are going to be supported in the near term future. So let us know. Just give it a go, guys, with the latest versions, of course. Update the latest versions, give it a go, and report back to us on the forums, especially if you have any issues. We'd love to know that. And of course, if everything works okay, then also let us know. It's good to know that it works. As well for Maya and Corona. Okay, so live link for Maya is going to be added also in the near term future. But apart from that, you can now use VR scenes generated from Maya and load them in Vantage. They work for the majority of cases. There are some minor unsupported features, but we are working on those as well. So again, let us know if you have any issues in your particular workflow. As far as for Corona, we do not support Corona at the time. We're looking into ways to make this efficient, to make it efficiently. And we'll let you know once we have more details. Pavel also has a question: will be live link supported in Rhino? This is there was also yet another question for Rhino. So this is also a part of our roadmap. So we are working on that, and it's expected to. So live link is expected to be part of Rhino and also SketchUp. We are working on those somewhat simultaneously, and again on the somewhat near term roadmap. So stay tuned. David asks, are you able to bring the Max camera into Vantage? When I tried to export the scene with animation, the file was huge. So if you obviously we support animated transformations only, or not obviously, but I just mentioned that. The camera is supported. We even added support for multiple cameras with the latest update of Viri for 3ds Max and Vantage. You should be able to get many cameras as well. The cameras are animated. There shouldn't be an issue, but they will not populate the animated camera track that you see in Vantage. They will be just an animated camera, and that would be that would be the issue here. The large scene file, the large file size of the scene could also be if you have animated deformable meshes, that could increase the size of the scene. So you could try exporting just a static scene if you don't care about that animation, and then in an empty scene just export the animated camera, and you can merge those together in Vantage and get the animated camera as well. So that could be a workaround if you still have issues with the animation. Yeah.
We've brought in a whole lot of animated characters, and it's a bit like using an Alembic file. It just increases the VR scene size, but that's to be expected because it's recording every single keyframe.
It is more or less an Alembic cache. It's just the format is different. But yes, you're completely right. Okay. Girare, again, sorry, definitely sure I'm not pronouncing the names correct. Apologies, guys. What is Vantage's approach to virtual reality and goggles? Currently, we only render to stereoscopic images or panoramic images as a single frame. We are looking into ways to make it more interactive. Excuse me. And the issue with that is the frame rate. Obviously, if we can't supply a decent frame rate of 90 frames per second, it would be a non-feasible solution. So we're looking for ways to to optimize some things and then hook into virtual reality and goggles. But yes, this is definitely something that is on the roadmap, and we are researching for that. And Filippo has the same question: Is the aim of Chaos to compete with Unreal or Twinmotion for fast, simple 3D work through using standalone apps or VR goggles? That's a relatively long question, but we are, again, everything related to VR goggles is something that we are considering. We want to deliver a completely interactive ray tracing to this type of devices. Again, we're talking about devices that need a computer to run, not a cardboard ones, obviously for hardware limitations. But yes, definitely we want to make some way of delivering content directly from Vantage to goggles. As for direct competition, I don't think I can compare that because Unreal is a game engine. It has so much more functionality than just rendering. So in that terms, no, definitely not a competition there. But we want to get ray tracing in real time to HMDs.
I think as a user, I could just jump in there and say, yes, we use all the technology. So we use Unreal, we use Unity, and we use Vantage. I think the difference, the way we like to look at it, is the others, as Simeon has said, are game engines. They're designed for that sort of gameplay or interactivity, whereas Chaos are a rendering company, and they're approaching this from real-time rendering. And that is why we stick with it, because it's sped up our rendering pipeline. And yes, we do go back into, for all of our final outputs, we go back into V-Ray, but this is slotted into our pipeline.
Great way to put it. Thanks. Thanks for that.
Well, you're not supposed to talk about the other competitors, but I can talk about it from the community point of view. And I think because a lot of people do compare renderers to game engines. They're different things. And if you've got to think of them as being different.
Exactly. Thanks. Thanks, Nigel. Great discussion. And thanks for the questions, actually. They sparked that. Then we have a question from Muad. Can Vantage handle animated trees and animated people with higher frame rate? I would say that it depends. If you're able to load the scene and depending on the performance of your graphics card, then you will get the animated trees, or animated people. Just bear in mind that currently the only way to have actually, what am I talking? Sorry. The only way to have any kind of animated deformed people or trees is through LiveLink, and even animated proxies are not supported yet. We are working on support for those, but again, it depends on as you asked the frame rate. So the only way that you can currently work around through this is to have the animated things, let's say in 3ds Max, and establish live link with the Vantage and hit the play button in 3ds Max, and then the things are going to be updated in Vantage, and that is it. So
Simeon, can I jump in on that?
Tricky. Yeah, absolutely.
So on those scenes that you saw, the Stack of World scenes, we actually had all the windmill or the wind turbines were actually animated. The thing to keep in mind, if you're in 3D Studio Max, because it's keyframed, it has to be keyframed all the way through. So we had out of range controllers on those, so they just kept spinning. But Vantage only recorded between the keyframes. So if you keyframe everything, you can bring it all into Vantage.
Yeah. Okay. That's a nice alternative.
Yeah. Well, and that's we used Populate. We dragged a whole load of Populate people in there, and that was perfect. So yeah, it's fun to use. Play with it. Have fun. There's no real learning curve. If an old man like me can use it, then all of you lot out there can as well.
Right. Okay. So do we have more questions? I think that's
there was one. There's one final one for me. I think that there was the photogrammetry one.
Yeah.
Do I use photogrammetry for the urban scapes? Sometimes, but usually it's all modeled.
Mm-hmm.
Easy one to answer.
That was a short one. Great.
But, I mean, end of the day, everything has to be geometry to be coming to Vantage. There was another question I saw about point cloud. Will there be in the future? Will point cloud be supported in Vantage?
Yeah, that's on us. We haven't yet researched a lot about that. We just bear in mind that we would like to have that. An alternative for point clouds could be the tool that the Viri proxy generating tool that could convert point cloud to a mesh. But we are still evaluating our options and see, because the point cloud is more or less a utility question rather than rendering. Or it could be solved by pipeline. So we'll stay up. We'll get back to you when we have more information. So okay. So thanks for all the questions, guys, and for the time you spent with us. I hope you liked it. We certainly do appreciate it. Thanks to Nigel and the rest of the Chaos team that helped us.
Thanks for having me. I see that
anytime.
If there's any more questions, please go to the Chaos forums and fire away there, and I will try and join the Chaos team to answer some of those. But yeah, thank you very much for having me.
That will be hugely appreciated, Nigel. Thanks again. So I suggest we wrap it up, and again, keep in touch with us on the forums, at the support mails, and everywhere you feel comfortable. We'll try to follow up with anyone who didn't answer their questions, who can get their questions answered, and we'll just be there on the lookout on the forums. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and have a good night, day, wherever you are.
And remember to hit the like button on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. See you all again.
Bye-bye.